U.S. President Joe Biden ends his bid for a second term. Biden endorses Kamala Harris in the presidential race. And locally, all tropical cyclone warning signals canceled. Hello and happy Monday. The Democratic Party in the United States is looking for a new presidential candidate as President Joe Biden decided against taking on Donald Trump. Biden endorsed Kamala Harris as he pulled out of the race. Criticism of the president had intensified in recent weeks, and pressure had been mounting on the 81-year-old to withdraw. Doubts about his chances of winning November's election only grew following a poor debate performance and other high-profile errors. David Garrett reports.
Some say 81-year-old President Joe Biden is too old and too slow. Critics questioned his clarity of thinking and ability to make crucial decisions, but he just made perhaps his biggest call of all. He is leaving the 2024 presidential race. In his letter addressed to fellow Americans, Biden wrote, he had achieved a lot and it had been a great honour to serve, but he believes it is in the best interests of the party and the country to stand down. Biden has not spoken publicly. He will give more details later this week. So what changed his mind? Possibly protesters over the weekend asking him to pass the torch, maybe testing positive for COVID, which raised more questions about his age. More likely, it was alarming polling data. Biden was told on Saturday that he was not only trailing in all 6 swing states, but his support was also collapsing in Virginia and Minnesota, where the Democrats are expected to win. His performance at last month's presidential debate with Donald Trump raised questions about his competency as he lost his train of thought on multiple occasions. Other gaffes followed.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
Biden endorsed running mate Kamala Harris for president. The Democratic Party appears split on whether the current vice president can unite the party, lead the country and beat Donald Trump. One Democratic senator who was with Harris over the weekend thinks she can.
And now, I think Kamala Harris, as our Democratic presidential nominee, is going to bring an X factor, a magical factor to this race that's going to galvanize voters all across the country who care about a woman's right to choose, who care about taking on the NRA.
The president will stay on for now. Some say the most powerful man in the world has been pressured to quit. Donald Trump had little sympathy, writing, Joe Biden was not fit to run and not fit to serve, adding, we will suffer greatly because of his presidency. David Garrett, TVB News.
Leaders from across the world have been reacting to Biden's decision not to stand for a second term. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida supports Biden's announcement and said the Japanese-U.S. alliance is the cornerstone of Japanese democracy and security. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Biden had achieved a great deal and that under Biden, the U.S. had been a reliable partner. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Biden has made his decision based on what he believes is best for America. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said he respected a tough but strong decision, and Russia dismissed the importance of the race. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu travels to America to meet with Biden tomorrow.
I plan to see President Biden, whom I've known for over 40 years. This will be an opportunity to thank him for the things he did for Israel in the war and during his long and distinguished career in public service as senator, as vice president, and as president. It will also be an opportunity to discuss with him how to advance in the critical months ahead the goals that are important for both our countries.
The election in November will be one which is watched by Australians but watched by people around the world because who the President of the United States is has an impact on the world as the world's largest economy and as an important partner of Australia, not just in security issues but in economic issues as well.
With Joe Biden's tenure in the White House drawing to a close, Daniel Rowell takes a look back at his extensive U.S. political career.
Joe Biden spent 36 years in the U.S. Senate in total. Just as his career was starting, he suffered an immense personal tragedy soon after being elected in 1972, when his wife Nelia and their one-year-old daughter Naomi were killed in an auto accident. Sons Beau and Hunter were critically injured. Joe Biden was not in the car during the crash. Later in life, Beau, the Attorney General of Delaware and Biden's eldest son, would pass away in 2015 after battling brain cancer. Biden married Jill Jacobs in 1977 as their family grew with the birth of their daughter, Ashley. As a senator, Biden chaired the confirmation hearings of 5 justices, including Clarence Thomas. During the Thomas hearings in 1991, Biden failed to conduct a full investigation into sexual harassment allegations against the nominee. In the wake of this, Biden worked to improve his record on issues important to women. Biden ran for president 3 times in his career. In 1987, his first run quickly ended after Biden was forced to acknowledge committing plagiarism in law school, exaggerating his academic record, and failing to attribute key passages in some campaign speeches. Barack Obama chose Biden as his running mate and eventually went on to win an historic victory in the 2008 U.S. presidential election.
Man, we're just getting started.
Biden eventually won the highest political office in 2020, defeating Donald Trump after a bitter battle on the campaign trail. Biden had earlier claimed Trump's divisive tenure propelled him to run for the presidency to restore the soul of the nation. His inauguration came at a time of national tumult and uncertainty amid the pandemic and just weeks after the U.S. Capitol was attacked by an insurrectionist siege by Trump supporters. As president, Biden drew on his time in the Senate to spearhead the passage of the American Rescue Plan to address the coronavirus pandemic, a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, and the Inflation Reduction Act. Biden visited many countries during his presidency, including Ukraine during its war with Russia and Israel during its offensive in Gaza against Hamas. He also ordered the final withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan, fulfilling a campaign promise to end America's longest war. The Afghanistan exit was marked by scenes of fear and violence, including the deaths of more than a dozen U.S. service members, leading to criticism from both sides of the aisle. Biden tested positive for COVID-19 twice during his presidency. He entered the U.S. national health emergency 3 years into the pandemic. By that time, rising inflation, congressional gridlock, and the Israel-Hamas war exerted a bitter toll on Biden's approval rating. Still, Biden was seen by many of his colleagues as a man who attempted to reach across the aisle during difficult times to find bipartisan solutions during his time in the White House. Dan Rowell, TV News.
Kamala Harris is the first female vice president of the United States and also the first Black woman and person of South Asian descent in the role. From Northern California, Harris has become one of the Democratic Party's most prominent figures. Tracy Furness has more.
We trust women.
Born in 1964 to a Jamaican father and Indian mother, and with a younger sister, Kamala Harris spent her formative years in Berkeley, California.
She grew up in a time period where there's a lot of civil rights activism, and she talks often about going to marches or rallies in strollers with her family, and really that's a very formative part of her upbringing.
She shared a deep bond with her mother, whom she has called her single biggest influence. Harris won her first election in 2003 when she became San Francisco's district attorney. She was elected California's Attorney General in 2010, the first woman and Black person to hold the job. She focused on issues including the foreclosure crisis and declined to defend the state's Proposition 8, which banned same-sex marriage and was later overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Our response is going to be what we did, that we spoke out, that we marched, we shouted, and we fought for justice and equality and fairness for everyone.
After being elected to the Senate in 2016, she quickly gained attention for her assertive questioning of Trump during congressional hearings. She also called out his behavior on social media.
Donald Trump's behavior on Twitter, that is threatening the lives of human beings. And he therefore has lost the privilege, and Twitter needs to take his account down. And I'm challenging all candidates to agree that this is a matter of safety, it's not a matter of free speech.
Twitter suspended Trump's account in 2021 due to the risk of further incitement of violence. Harris launched her presidential campaign in early 2019 with the slogan "Harris for the People." But her campaign fizzled as she struggled to land on a consistent message that resonated with voters. Despite this, her rise continued as President Joe Biden chose her as his running mate. In 2023, Biden asked Vice President Harris to lead the first ever federal Office of Gun Violence Prevention. She was also tasked with some of the highest profile domestic issues. Her husband, Doug Emhoff, left his private law practice by Inauguration Day to focus on his role at the White House as second gentleman. They met in 2013 and married a year later. It was her first marriage and his second. His children are in their 20s and call Harris Mamala, a play on her name and a Yiddish word for little mother. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
The observatory cancelled all tropical cyclone warning signals at 12:20 p.m. today as tropical storm Typhoon moves further away from Hong Kong. Weather authorities expect local temperatures to reach 35 degrees Celsius or above over the new territories in the next few days. Mimo Singhai reports.
The weather was mainly cloudy during the day. Despite the wind, it remained hot with the maximum temperature reaching 35.5 degrees Celsius in Shenzhen at around 4:30 p.m. According to the traditional Chinese calendar, it is Greater Heat or Dashu today. Greater Heat, which is the 12th solar term in the calendar, means the summer sun reaches its peak and people can expect some of the year's hottest days during this period. This mainland tourist said he did not expect the weather to be pleasant today. The typhoon left and now the weather is fine, only a bit windy, he said. The sun is not that big and I feel cool, said another visitor. The observatory removed all tropical cyclone warning signals after midday. At 4 p.m., tropical storm Typhoon was centered about 300 kilometers east to southeast of Hanoi at 4 p.m. It is forecast to move northwest at about 10 kilometers per hour across Baipu Wan. Meanwhile, severe tropical storm Gami was centered about 580 kilometers northeast of Manila. The observatory said it will move north at about 10 kilometers per hour in the general direction of the seas east of Taiwan and will gather force significantly.
Under the influence of the outer subsiding air associated with Gami, we expect that the weather over southeastern China will be very hot with a few showers midweek this week.
Mims 9, TVB News.
Still ahead, a lawmaker's suggestion on how to help attract mainland talents to Hong Kong. A man arrested by the Privacy Commissioner's office for suspected doxing. And Bangladesh appears calm after the Supreme Court scrapped some controversial job quotas. Welcome back. The third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China has pledged support for Hong Kong in the city's effort to attract high-caliber international talent. But some lawmakers said the lack of flexibility in foreign exchange regulations for Chinese nationals could hamper the entrepreneurial endeavors of new talent from the mainland. Jackie Lin reports.
Among the resolutions made during the third plenum of the party's Central Committee last week was the country's support for Hong Kong and Macau to become an international hub for high-caliber talent. Under the city's various talent admission schemes, a total of 200,000 applications have been approved as of the end of June this year, of which about 150,000 were from the mainland. But with the mainland's foreign exchange policy, Chinese nationals can only exchange foreign currency equivalent to $50,000 annually. That includes the Hong Kong dollars. Lawmaker Shanghai Long, who has been assisting the relocation of mainland immigrants to Hong Kong, said the annual quota has presented obstacles to their investment and startup work. He said for those whose monthly rent is at around $30,000, plus utilities and other daily expenses, their annual expenditure could easily rack up to $50,000. He added that some entrepreneurs who want to start businesses in Hong Kong often require even more capital. Shang said in a bid to retain the new talent in Hong Kong, it's reasonable to allow more flexibility in such policies. With that, he brought up 3 measures. They include increasing the foreign exchange quota for these new immigrants based on the number of years they've resided in Hong Kong. Second, a so-called closed-loop procedure to relax direct remittance of funds to Hong Kong for specific expenses such as tuition fees and rent. Third, allowing businessmen to make guarantees on the mainland to obtain funds and loans in Hong Kong. After the government relaunched the Capital Investment Entrance Scheme in March, only 3 applications were approved as of June. Lawmaker Robert Lee said the vetting process was too tight, with some cases requiring not just monthly bank statements, but also breakdowns of daily transactions. He hopes the scrutiny of assets could be streamlined. On strengthening Hong Kong's position as an offshore renminbi hub, Lee said it is necessary to increase the use of yuan, including oil trading and RMB-based investment products. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
A 40-year-old man was arrested by the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data for suspected doxing. The PCPD's investigations show the victim was the suspect's girlfriend before they broke up in April last year. In May last year, the victim cut off contact with the man. After that, a total of 14 messages containing the woman's name, address, phone number, occupation, and the username of her social media account were written on lampposts in the district where she resides, as well as in stairwells of Vice establishments in 2 districts in Kowloon. The man was arrested on suspicion of violating the privacy ordinance. He was granted bail. The privacy watchdog said doxing is a serious offense. Upon conviction, offenders are liable to a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison and a fine of $1 million. The Chimsha Choi exhibition of Japanese cartoon character Doraemon was forced to close temporarily last week due to bad weather. The organizers said they would keep a close watch on the changes of weather as they could impact their outdoor exhibits. The 12-meter-tall inflatable Doraemon installation, which had been deflated earlier due to the thunderstorm, has yet to be re-inflated. The organizer has placed sandbags under some exhibits to prevent them from falling. The organizer added it will decide whether to suspend the exhibition depending on the weather. The free exhibition zone is open to the public from July 13th until August 11th. The ticketed area will be open until August 18th. A Supreme Court verdict appears to have restored calm in Bangladesh. The court ordered a scaling back of a controversial quota system for government jobs. The original plan prompted protests which killed 100 people last week. There was still a heavy security presence on the streets. Internet communications are disabled. Mostly students demonstrated last week, demanding the government scrap a scheme reserving 30% of government jobs for relatives of veterans who fought in Bangladesh's War of Independence in 1971. The Supreme Court ordered that the allowance be cut to 5%, with 93% of jobs allocated on merit, while 2% is set aside for ethnic minorities. This is seen as a partial victory for students, but it remains to be seen if the ruling will be enough to quell growing dissent against Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who has been in power for 15 years. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Pearl Magazine is up shortly. Bye for now.